Welcome to SEO Conspiracy.com. Speaking of conspiracy, let's enter the matrix. Is RankBrain ruling Google? Is artificial intelligence all over in the world of search and Google in particular? Again, back in the podcast, Mr. Bill Slawski, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, Bill.
Hello, how are you today?
I'm wonderful. And yourself?
Good.
Ready to... and again, we have a little bit of different short hair, long beard, because there was a little bit of a mixing up in the way we schedule, and we had to reshoot a couple of episodes. But the important part is today, a major block or chunk of the history of search, Google SEO, because once they decided to go this way, and they had to go this way, there is no going back. It will, the world change. Everything is pretty much what they call artificial intelligence nowadays. So just to begin with a little bit of controversy, what is your opinion on this concept of artificial intelligence?
I'm not quite sure what's so artificial about it. I do like that they're trying to mimic human intelligence, but it sort of reminds me of natural language processing, which is supposed to emulate how people talk and ask questions and think. But the focus of natural language processing is on a computer understanding humans, as opposed to humans understanding computers.
Interesting how you put it. Yeah, my problem is more with the word intelligence, because people think it makes the machine is smart, like Skynet, Terminator. And it sounds more like a marketing fluff term than really what it is.
So I've been listening to podcasts on artificial intelligence. There's one guy, Lex Friedman, who does a podcast. He interviews lots of people from places like DeepMind or Google or some other places. And it's interesting seeing how he talks about topics such as computers. Do computers remember things? Do computers dream?
Yeah, wow. Well, did you ever feel that your machine, computer, camera, car was haunted? It was possessed again?
I'm a little bit afraid of the Internet of Things, where every device you have, your refrigerator, your oven, so on, has their own voice and their own interface for you to talk to it and question it. And you can ask your refrigerator, what was that recipe I cooked last week? To have all the ingredients.
True. To start this conversation, and we have a lot to cover, so bear with us, because I couldn't take away any of those tabs any of those articles that you wrote.
Yeah.
But to start with, what is so difficult for a machine why is it so difficult for a machine to imitate, quote unquote, the human brain? What's the challenge here?
So part of the challenge is understanding and remembering what the particular idiosyncrasies that a person might have, what preferences they have, what affinities they have, what's important to them, why they have a need to search and to understand what their informational needs are and how well a computer might be able to meet those needs.
Mm.
And in every conversation, you have give and take. You have one person asking questions and the other person answering them, and it turns about. It's an interaction.
There's
Uh, can,
nuance.
can a computer engage in that type of conversation where it's not just giving, but sometimes it's taking, sometimes it's asking? What would you prefer to see? What would you rather? What's important to you?
Yes, 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 and double yes and triple yes. The nuance, and this also when I started to look at vocal search, voice,
Yeah.
it seems like it was one of the big issue there. The nuance in when you speak and you say things, it's difficult for machine to understand this gray area. Yeah, 0, 1, yes, no. That's how a machine breaks down the information at the core.
So Google, just about that, Google looks at certain things that we don't even think about, consider sometimes. They updated a patent this past week, which is on speech and spoken searches, where they're trying to understand accents.
Mm.
And in some systems, an accent could be considered noise that could be filtered out. That it makes it harder for a computer to understand what a person's saying. But under this patent, they said, okay, this is extra information that we could use. If we understand where the person's accent is from, we can give them more information.
That's very interesting because you have well, the French accent. Everybody loves it, but let's take another Portuguese. Okay.
So if you're French, you're searching from New Jersey.
Mm.
Google might think to itself, if it could think to itself, if we're getting to that point of artificial intelligence, it might think to itself, okay, what can I tell this person about that might appeal to them as somebody who is obviously French?
Mm-mm. That's interesting. But it does not have this opinion of saying, oh, the French accent is prettier or sounds better than the Portuguese accent. And even between the Portuguese from Portugal and Portuguese from Brazil, people love the Portuguese from Brazil and don't like as much the sound of Portuguese from Portugal. That's an opinion. That's what humans have. But the machine does not have any opinion. Or maybe they do. We'll find out. But to start off with one of your, well, not early, to 2016.
Yeah.
Let me read the introduction. So, Understanding Systems, and the title is Google Machine Learning. When I was in high school, one of the required classes I had to take was a shop class. I had been taking mostly what the school called enriched courses, or what were mostly academic classes that featured primarily reading, writing, and arithmetic. A shop class had more of a trade focus. And you were surprised with this first shop class, and the instructor talked about systems. Said, what is it? What is a system? And what was your first? Can you please continue that story about how you learn early on and the link with the Google patent?
Our first task in that class was to build an electric motor, and the shop teacher said, okay, when we take apart a car, when we look at its different features, we look at the systems that are involved in how that car operates. There are systems that involve electricity and electrical motors. There are parts that involve gasoline and gasoline motors. And these are different things that work in different ways. And understanding how all these systems work together to create some type of larger organic structure is important. And if you can break the operation of something down into the systems that run behind it, you get a better sense of how it operates, how it works, how it could be improved, possibly.
Mm. But it is about improvement. That's the whole thing. That's the key word here, and not the key word, the key word, or the improvement. Because the move to, and every single, it's not only Google, every single search engine today is pretty much run by machine learning and so on. And even SEO companies, you remember how like Moz, Majestic, I don't remember how they were called before, but now it's Authoritas. It was something at you in England. Those guys, Lawrence O'Toole in Twickenham. Oh, forgot. But everybody, it was the move. Okay, let's get rid of SEO, and we hold data companies. It was not just Google; it was the entire industry moved into this world of artificial intelligence, quote unquote, because you have the concept of artificial intelligence, and then you have the real mechanics of it all, which is more into what's called machine learning and deep learning. So the first key here is Google had to. You link it to in your article. I'll show the article. You link from Wired says how Google is remaking itself as a machine learning first company.
Right.
Why was it mandatory? Why was there no way to keep on going with the old system? Because improvement had to go through this type of algorithms, or there was no way to scale it up otherwise?
Scalability is one issue. And Google's shown us with its evolution from over time, things like the Google directory, where they took DMOZ and they reorganized the order of things listed in the directory by PageRank.
Mm.
And that was their improvement over, they cloned DMOZ, which was allowable under DMOZ's terms of service. But organizing them in a unique way by PageRank was their improvement upon it. And at one point they said, okay, so we're never adding to this. We're never updating it. We're never adding new sites. We're limited by humans and their ability to scale. So let's stop doing this directory. They are sort of doing the same thing with the knowledge graph. So the knowledge graph, they're using they use Freebase as a baseline for all the entities that they knew about. And they saw that people using volunteers at Wikidata were really building much quicker than the people at Freebase were. And they migrated to Wikidata from Freebase. But now they're coming out with patents that talk about how they can extract entity information directly from websites and from news sites. And if they can do that well, they don't need to rely as much upon humans to do it and volunteers. People are publishing news articles every day, adding new information, new knowledge about entities and about things that we know about. They don't quite need to have human beings type something in. Mm-hmm. When you have a knowledge graph that doesn't update because somebody new got elected or somebody passed away, it's maybe easier if a machine could do that than relying upon a human to try to do it and try to keep up.
Especially when you have some of those tasks that humans are reluctant to do, or we won't get into the debate of is artificial intelligence taking away jobs from humans and so on. That's not the debate today, but still feels like in the mind of people, oh, you have trucks that will drive themselves. Yeah, sure, but machine learning can replace a doctor, especially X-ray. The success rate of a machine analyzing an X-ray is way higher than any PhD, by far. So it's not only about very low paid job or simple task. It's just sometimes the machine is I was going to say better. No, it makes more sense, I guess, to use algorithms than humans for specific reasons and specific tasks. And definitely in the world of search, especially when you want to try to follow the growth and the speed and the amplitude of the web, which I don't think people realize. We did I don't think it was published yet, but we have that video, how big is the web, with Dixon Jones, because it's a good question. How big is the web? How big is it? Really? Do you have a clue? How do you measure it? By the way, how do you even start by what? How do you links, pages, weight? I don't know. It's big. Anyway, it's big. So that directory was killed because it could not scale. Well, on the other hand, Wikipedia survived, and it will. So two different concepts. A directory, why bother with humans, basically? But encyclopedia, as far as today, humans are still relevant. Maybe in the near future, maybe that will change, and we'll talk about it in a little bit with the author rank and so on. Because obviously, everybody's entitled to an opinion, but not opinions are equal. Now, next question is, Google decided to start. Well, first you have, we'll go into the different algorithms, but what was the first challenge they had to face when they decided to figure out who was in relation to what and why, and how to organize this? Basically, my question is, how did they go from a lab, like a concept in the lab, to upscale, to scale it up to production, to Google? What was the big challenge there?
So the post we shared where I talked about systems, talked about Google developing artificial intelligence to help with customer service at Google. Mm-hmm. They had built knowledge bases where they said, here are all the problems people ask about, and here are all the answers. Mm-hmm. And, how often do people ask these questions? How do we prioritize them? Which are the most important? They, as the name of the patent suggests, they built a hierarchy, a taxonomy based on hierarchies. So they said, these are the most important problems, the ones we have to solve more often. These are the ones that are less important. Let's decide which we should write support pages about, which we should have spokespeople from Google discuss. Let's develop a strategy for handling these, for answering them.
You also sometimes say that the one of the challenge is training. So you mentioned Freebase, which was acquired. It was the company was called MetaWeb, I think.
Right.
So they had a base. They had data. because people think, oh, Google, it knows everything, it has so much data. Yeah, but raw data without, it's not just about data that I've seen coming by, like so much data that is, you're like, you think you have gold and you're like looking at it, it's like, no, I can't do anything with this.
So I wrote a blog post once by Google and lots of data and stuff like that. I had a search engineer from Yahoo comment.
Oh, really?
Post. Yeah, he said, we collect lots of data too. The problem is there's so much of it, we don't know which is the most important data, which is the least important data. And, it is a problem. How do you determine? How do you decide that? So Google is using, another patent that came out with said Google will identify quotes by looking in knowledge bases and finding information about the speakers and when they said it, which movie, which news event, which so on. And this is how Google's going to answer quotes. And they updated that patent. They did a continuation patent where they said, that's not the way we're going to do this anymore. Instead, they said, we're going to analyze videos. And we're going to find the video itself that quote was said in.
Mm.
If it's a movie, if it's a newscast, so on, we can show people that video. And most likely when they're searching for a quote from a specific person, they want to watch the video anyway. But we don't have to rely upon knowledge bases as much because we're creating the knowledge base by analyzing all these videos ourselves. So we're doing it in a machine learned way that's no longer reliant upon scaling by people.
So one of the challenge was to decide what's the most important, scalability, and then you have the training part of the whole system.
With analyzing all these videos is part of it's part of the training set, and it's the focus is on providing people access to those videos where those quotes are being said.
Yeah, and they updated it recently, right? So now it comes down to I don't know how much of the YouTube technology is used by Google, but YouTube is remarkable. The caption, the way it understands voices and the intent. 5 to 10 videos is enough for YouTube to understand exactly how you speak, what you speak about, and so on.
So I did a study about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, where I watched as many videos as I could and had the closed caption on to see how close the transcripts were to accurate. And for a lot of them, they were terrible. But they often got place names wrong and product names wrong. The only one that was any good was a State of the Union address by Barack Obama, because there was evidence that somebody had gone in and edited it to make sure it was correct.
I forgot that phase. Yeah. The first 5 to 10 videos, you need to edit the caption. And that's how the machine learns. Thank you. Because that's the important part. If you don't edit the caption, it's not going to work.
And they've gotten a lot better since then.
But the speed, because in my head, this whole machine learning was very slow. The image I use is a kid will burn itself on a stove once, maybe twice, 3 times if it's really like a stubborn one, right? And that's it. And it will even be able to link the heat from the stove with a fireplace. Similar feeling. Well, the machine will not. And the machine will have to burn itself like 1,000,000 times before it understands these burns. But the
machine learns incredibly fast when it's playing a game like Asteroids over and over and over again, nonstop. And it learns all the right moves, all the wrong moves. It did in DeepMind doing arcade games, they found ways to win at games like Pong that had never been done by a human before.
Wow. You know that? Did you play Pong? I remember playing Pong.
I remember playing Pong, but I didn't play Pong the way DeepMind did.
Well, it came out. I was born in '69, so I think it came out right when I was. But I remember playing it early on. Wow, Pong is when you played Pong, you know you're old school. I once fired up an old Apple II and I threw in like Snake and Space Invader. And my son was looking at me on that machine with the fan, you know, the noise and the clunky keyboard. I was like, really? You guys were playing? That was the game? That was the game experience? Yeah. We didn't know better. I mean, no PlayStation. Okay, let's get serious again. Let's go back to what you said about the pattern on machine learning for customer service. I kind of overlooked it. But now that you spoke about it and you mentioned it, I understand how important this is. This is typically the type of pattern that you're like, oh yeah, sure, customer service. No, this is very important because this is
people eating its own dog food.
Exactly. But then we have to also mention the fact that they need human validation.
Yeah.
So you have the training set. They put the algorithm do something. Sometimes they give it instructions. Sometimes they don't. The image I give is you have a library, and you put the machine learning in there. Sometimes you will tell it how the library is organized, or you could not, and different output. Yeah. But then you need human beings to validate all those results.
Which is Quality Raters Guides. They're the testing set.
Many people think that quality raters have a big impact on the anti-spam, like the Google penalty. No. First of all, they audit a SERP, search engine result page. They don't audit. Well, you have pages on a SERP, but it's not the way they look at it. And it's most definitely more machine learning training than anti-spam objectives. It would not be, just from an economic perspective, having quality raters to pre-qualify spammy websites, it would not make a lot of sense, in my opinion.
Have you played the image labeler game at Google Photos lately?
No.
Okay, so it's like Google will show you.
Well, we can play now. Is it online?
Google will show you a number of pictures and ask you which ones are pictures of the beach.
Okay, I see it. Yeah, I played the dogs with the Microsoft version.
Yeah,
the same thing. Yeah.
So the idea is to get human beings to not train them, but to test how well they've trained themselves.
Yeah, the Bing was what Microsoft. What is this dog? Or forget what it was. But you had to tell the machine, is this a Labrador or Great Dane or whatever? And without, how long does this have to go? The human validation process, is it ongoing? You can't keep on training without validation, or is there at one point you can let go of humans 100%?
I sort of see it as a necessary step. It's one that you don't want to necessarily avoid. You can when you're doing the initial training, sometimes you can take shortcuts to make that training period less long, like using pre-training approaches like BERT. Where
hold on a minute. Listeners, hold that thought. BERT, One of the we'll come back to Bert. Okay, keep on going. Just hold that thought, Bert.
Okay, so you've already done some of the training. You haven't identified parts of speech on a page.
Hmm.
Bert's doing that for you. It's determining whether a word's a noun, a verb, an adverb, an adjective. So you're letting a system that has already done training on a book corpus and on the whole of Wikipedia to understand things like words that tend to be related to each other tend to co-occur frequently. Bert knows a lot about a lot of things, and it can tag words. It can tag them to identify the parts of speech they're from. When you're looking for to rank passages that might be answers,
Mm.
and you've tagged one word as an entity, and then you've tagged the next word that follows it immediately as a verb, as the verb is.
Okay.
So usually an answer is something like the London Bridge is.
Mm-mm.
So you've got an entity, you've got the beginning of an answer. So this is how you're identifying answers to questions by understanding the parts of speech associated with the words in a passage.
Well, now that you launched the word Bert, the most well-known of them all is RankBrain.
Yeah.
And there's always a shortcut that sometimes I use. The boss at Google today is RankBrain. Maybe because the word RankBrain sounds sexy. I don't know why RankBrain symbolizes machine learning at Google. But what do you have a theory on on why it's all about RankBrain?
I think part of it has to do with the idea that the game of search is finding keywords and guessing the right keywords that might show you an answer to a question you have. And it's a matter of how well you can guess which words to ask a search engine about to get an answer as to how successful you are at search.
Mm.
And the idea Google started using synonym substitutions for words that you might use as keywords to give you answers, to rewrite the queries that you ask. And they did start doing that in 2003. They had people like Amit Singhal writing patents about synonym substitutions. And he was the guy who said Google search should be like Star Trek tricorders. You can talk into the device and it'll answer you. It'll tell you what you're looking at.
Oh, that's a famous, I think it's a Sergey Brin quote, which says, I dream about a device that I think about a question and the phone will give me my answer.
Yeah.
And that was early 2000 or something like that. Anyway, let's go. Okay, Bill, let's go. Let's do it.
Okay, so that synonym substitution developed into Hummingbird at some point.
Okay.
And Hummingbird, one of the differences between Hummingbird and synonym substitution is often in a synonym substitution, Google will say, okay, we've got this query, we've got these words, we don't understand a couple of them. Let's see if we can rewrite them and get better answers. And that's synonym substitution, but Hummingbird is looking at words that appear in the same query that aren't necessarily adjacent to each other and using those to better understand what the word might mean. Like a Hummingbird query that might be rewritten is, what is a good place to get lasagna and good wine? And if you substitute the word place for a restaurant, you get a pretty good query result. But the word place isn't next to the word lasagna or wine. So you're trying to take the context of all the words in a query to get an answer, to understand. It's like, what is the best place for Chicago style pizza? Place could be restaurant, or place could be finish. And if you're looking for Chicago style pizza, you probably want a restaurant. So they're understanding context by looking at the whole of the query.
Context is the big idea between Hummingbird.
Right. So RankBrain.
Wait, hold on.
Okay.
Why do I love Hummingbird? I told you before we started. Hummingbird is because SEOs see Google updates all the time. Yeah. Guys, they're just machine learning patterns, okay? The up and downs you see in the SERPs, weather stuff, 90% of it is just the way machine learning works, right? But Hummingbird, nobody saw anything. And Google very proudly announced, hey guys, there's been an update out for a while and you guys didn't see it.
So part of the focus behind Hummingbird was on longer queries, ones that you would ask in the conversation.
Not very SEO centric.
Somebody was doing a presentation on Hummingbird and she asked me, how do I prepare for this? I said, okay, start doing all your queries with 5 or 6 or more words. Stop doing them with 2 or 3 words. Ask questions like a person.
But at that scale and the importance now looking back, we realize how important is Hummingbird. It's probably the most important of them all, actually. But the fact that not a single SEO, not even Barry Schwartz, so anything. I mean, we had patterns, we had all this, you documented all that. But again, we never say it enough. The pattern doesn't mean that it's in production in Google. Never does. Now, let's go to the next one.
Yeah.
So you have, we'll finish. Okay, no, let's go to RankBrain now.
Okay.
Let's go to RankBrain. So what is the difference with Hummingbird?
So RankBrain is based on word vectors, which means Google has taken a very large corpus, like the scanned book corpus or all of Wikipedia, and said, okay, which words tend to appear next to each other? And that's the machine learned part of RankBrain. And what RankBrain can do is look at a query and determine whether or not it's missing some words. So if somebody's searching for New York Times puzzle, RankBrain might say, when we see New York Times puzzle, a word that we often see together with those, that tends to co-occur with those, is the word crossword. So the query should be rewritten to New York Times puzzle crossword. And the results that we get show that lots of people look for New York Times crossword puzzle. Looking at query logs, we know that's true.
But now the question is, word. What is the difference when a machine like Google uses transforming instead of a word like humans analyze a word, they use a mathematical entity basically, and the old way of automatically processing language was about real language word and the distance between 2 words. For example, why Abraham and Lincoln go together is because so many documents have Abraham and Lincoln next to one another. So that was the old way. Right. But now I think SEOs understand that Google does not really think of words like we do. it's more like a real mathematical approach. Context vectors, guys, vectors. The word that's very important to understand that.
Well, co-occurrence. As my friend Don Anderson sometimes says, there's a guy named Fred Frith who
Oh, hold on. I have to stop.
is a computer scientist and said that you can tell a word by the company it keeps.
Hold on. Usually it's your phone ringing, and now it's mine. Oops, sorry. Let me kill that. Yeah, Dawn Anderson. But she doesn't write so much anymore. But when she writes, she writes like really long, very thought pieces, very very well argumented pieces, and what I'm trying to express here is, and helping out SEOs to understand that you need to help Google. If you understand how these essential algorithms, what they want, if you understand what they want, you don't even need to understand the formulas or anything like that. What we're trying to give you here as value is going straight to the output of what does the machine want.
So the word vector approach is an example they often use is that a man is to a king as a woman is to a queen.
Okay.
And you can tell those relationships are similar based upon all the words that tend to occur with each of those concepts.
Mm. The fascinating part for me is not the. It's more how the predictive part, the how they can anticipate. But even old school. Last time last time. Because we didn't record in the right order, I don't remember. But we so don't mind me. But the fact is that very early on, they were already into what we see in production now, for example, in Google Discover, the predictive search. But even since the early 2000s, and even in the 90s, you already have the Ngram, for example, Ngram algorithm, from a series of entities, you can guess the upcoming one, or all those patterns you wrote about from the early 2000s that were already into the whole predictive, and the speed at which Google can return results, because we take it for granted. But the insane calculation that goes into this predicting something, then going back to the machine, then prefetching it, and the round robin and personalization. Well, do we even have a sense of how big is these algorithms and the lines of codes? And must be tremendous.
It makes sense that they're trying to move away from human scale learning to web scale learning, because if you can shave off some time in your processes, you can provide lots of answers a lot sooner.
Sometimes it feels like Google can't go back and they want to organize the world's information and makes it accessible to us the best way, the most efficient way possible. That's the core value of Google. That's what they do since day one. They do it very well. But when we know that 90, and I'm generous by saying 90% of the web is crap, they have to deal with so much crap. Guys, not 25 billion spammy pages and 90 billion spammy links per day are filtered out by Google. And that's the stuff that they take out. so that's a lot.
They're trying to solve problems. They're trying to address things. For instance, local search. You look in knowledge panels, you see busyness indicators, which tell you how busy a certain place you might be searching for might be at the time you do the search. And they're actually looking at location history associated with people's phones to tell how long people wait in line for a table at a restaurant, how long they wait in line at a cash register to check out, and give you a sense of how good an experience or how bad an experience you might have going to a certain place in a little short histogram that's associated with Knowledge Panel. They're solving a problem that we didn't know we had.
Exactly. Profiling is not always bad. We won't go into the debate around privacy. Maybe for another day.
So most people using navigation approve of the use of Google understanding their location. So I'm not concerned about privacy with that, because most people have said, yes, you can track me. You can tell me how to get places.
Even back to Google Now, before Google Assistant. Do you remember? First, it was 2012, 11, maybe Google Now came out. It was the first attempt to predictive search. I remember doing a keynote on that, and the eyes of people in the crowd were like, like the cartoon, because they were like, really? They're going to be able to... It sounded like science fiction. I'm like, no, it's here. It's happening. And
I think I gave a presentation, get a response like that too.
when you have the Labrador look in front of you, when the person is looking at you, totally lost. And it was already there. It was not science fiction at all. And now, a few years later, the power of especially I look at Google Discover on the Android phone because of the hardware, because they have the entire ecosystem. Wow. And Apple has been working for the past 10 years on their search engine, and they are just coming out now with a few features like improving Siri and so on. Let's just talk about the benefits today of profiling, because if you don't let yourself profiled or spied on, whatever you want to call it, the quality of the results is very poor. Okay, let me ask this question. If we remove the whole profiling part, if the personalization, how far can it go? Especially when I'm thinking about some of those search engine result pages before the RankBrain training, when they were putting everything in random, and then you saw the evolution upon places, profiles, and so on, and they started to sort it out. I can still show you. Actually, we need to break a little bit Google, but because I live in Andorra, which doesn't exist for Google, we're in this black hole. I can still see results. There are very few results, like a few, usually 60, 80 results on a query, and it's all random because it doesn't understand what the hell I want. I'm logged in, I have history, but I have this ability to access those raw search engine pages for terms like, I remember wine in French, VIN, which is also some vehicle identification ID thing in English, and then there's also a veterinary ID something. So I can reproduce it now. I need to do a few tricks to get into the matrix, but it's very interesting because I type buy wine, I mean the French equivalent, buy wine, search wine, cheap wine, and I type wine, VIN in French, vin, and then I go back in the past and I get this really random page where all the results are not personalized. We forget that it's like watching ads on TV. It's not personalized, not a great experience. Well, ads are not a great experience anyway, but especially when they are not personalized, it's dreadful.
So I probably do 3 or 4 Google Now searches a day. Just because I'm curious. I want to see information about the things that it knows I'm interested in. It knows I'm interested. It has a history of my searches, and it can decide which things I want to find out more about. And I've also told it what my interests are. Sometimes Google now will allow you to update your interests and tell which types of movies you like to watch, what types of music you like to listen to, uh, whether or not you're interested in politics, uh, technology, and so on. And it does keep updated. And Google Now and Google News both have different algorithms. It's interesting switching back and forth between them both a couple times a day. And I do that too.
Do you have a? Well, sorry. Did you want to go on?
No.
No.
Go ahead.
What is the difference between hyper personalization and the machine putting you into a bucket? Okay, you are this, let's call it computer, internet, web related profession, hobby, photography, flowers, likes the sea, likes tacos. So that's hyper personalization. Or they just Google puts you into a bucket of, okay, nerd that likes to take pictures of flowers. Or I don't know. Like do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, do they have buckets where they put you in, or is it really the oh, it's not a person. You're more like an IP or.
There is a recent patent that goes into more depth about personalization and that type of things than I've seen before. I need to write a blog post about because it breaks more into knowledge graph and entities and so on than any previous patent about personalization I've seen before. The fact that you can identify both your express and implied interests by telling it what you're interested in, and then by showing it by doing searches. We give Google a location history based on where we carry our phones. We give it a search history based on what we search for. We're training Google all the time about what we're interested in. Google's collecting data from us about when we do certain types of searches for certain types of things, and what we express an interest in when it shows us predictive queries in Google, and we decide what to click on when we're seeing those predictive queries. We're giving an indication of which we're most interested in. In Google Now, you can also vote up or vote down things. You can say, show me more of this or show me less of this. And that's a recent addition within the past month or so.
But don't you feel like it's trying to go the Instagram way? Kind of. It's, well, first of all, first question. Because that's a big question in the industry. Between Facebook and Google, who has the best data?
Yeah.
We both don't like very much Facebook. We're not big fans. But it feels like, I don't know. I couldn't give you a straight answer between, it feels like it's two different paths. There's no better. It's just...
So I was telling you about a patent that I'm looking at now that I'm writing a blog post about now on opinion.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
And Google top stories, Google will identify what it thinks are top stories for different subjects and show you a carousel of those in search results at the top of the results. So it doesn't personalize those too much. But it possibly could. There's a fear, I think, at Google that you might get stuck in a filter bubble and it might show you the things that you're most interested in all the time. And they want to avoid that. So they said, we'll add these opinion stories to these top stories as a way to provide more information, a wider view. People who write op-ed pieces in news aren't journalists. They're usually concerned citizens, politicians, industry people, people who don't get news stories every day for people, but who have opinions, and often strong opinions. There's some level of sentiment associated with these stories. And they're using a machine learning approach to identify stories that are opinion-based stories. And they're trying to add those to the top stories they show, in part to break people out of filter bubbles, to avoid the fact that they might personalize too much by giving people a wider range of information.
It feels like, depending upon the topics, you might have a better experience. For example, I think that photography, that we both like a lot, would be a topic where I see a lot of opinions and people being eager to gather opinions from other non-professional, especially what is a professional photographer is also a big question. Like if you're just a local wedding photographer, do I really care about your point of view? Is it really relevant? I could be a hobbyist and take better pictures than a professional photographer. So the playing field is very different in photography instead of nuclear physics, for example.
There are two schools of thought regarding becoming a better photographer. One of them is take lots of pictures. And the second one is look at lots of pictures.
Yeah, we do both. But I think it's a good example. Photography, where you have a lot of organic content and a lot of non-professional, non-professional opinions that are very valuable, while some professional opinions are not relevant at all. Because when a professional local wedding / portrait photographer tries to give you lessons on YouTube, that person doesn't understand, as a hobbyist, when they say, for example, the gear doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If you want to please yourself by buying a Leica, who is that professional photographer for saying, yeah, no, you don't buy a Leica or don't buy a Zeiss lens because you are not a professional. Like, you don't understand, well, if I can afford it, why don't I? What can I have better gear than you? What can I buy a Hasselblad or Phase 1? What was it, like $60,000 for a camera, medium format? So yeah, and another example would be about even more controversial, because that's about health. Are you relevant about diet because you have a PhD in nutrition, or because you lost 30 pounds in 30 days? Complicated, huh? But we'll go into authors in a little bit. Let's finish up with, we spoke about Hummingbird, we spoke about RainBrain, we're missing one. BERT. Told you earlier. Friends, hold that thought about BERT. Yeah. So please explain to us what is BERT, because I feel it's the less known of them all.
BERT, like word vectors, is a way of pre-training an understanding of what a query may contain. What it adds is context. Word vectors don't add context. BERT is much better about understanding what words might appear. Sometimes they'll train it on a set of information, and they'll cover up words. So they'll cover up sentences and ask BERT, what is the covered word? What is the covered sentence? And see how well BERT can understand what the missing pieces are as part of the training.
Those are the main three: bird, hummingbird, RangBrain. But we don't even know the thousands of experiments they're running.
So BERT is used in a wide range of natural language processing tasks. It's used in question answering and passage understanding. It's used in query rewriting. It's used in a mix of things.
Is it at the core of this passages indexing that makes a lot of people wonder nowadays? There was the announced by Prabhakar Raghavan, a new boss at Google, and he announced the Search 2020 or 2021, I forgot which one it was, and there was this whole like passages indexing.
Right, but the passage indexing section of his presentation did not mention the use of BERT with passage indexing. It was part of the presentation adjacent to passage indexing, where he talked about more use of BERT, but he did not say in the presentation, I watched it 5 or 6 times, he did not say in the section about passage indexing that BERT was being used.
That's interesting, because it would make sense, but maybe...
So doing some searching around in places like Google Scholar, there are papers about using BERT to do passage, they refer to it as passage re-ranking. And what they said is, here's my phone call.
Here's your commercial. What are they selling today?
It's
call from Rupan CP.
It's a spammer because
Call from Rupan CP.
I
was wondering because he's late. He's usually a bit earlier than this.
In the caller ID, they don't identify a person. They identify the city of location. And what the spammers are doing is spoofing your zip code or your area code.
Really?
To try to make it look like it's a local call.
Oh, okay. Got it.
More likely people answer the phone because you say, oh, it's got to be someone nearby.
Yeah, because it's local. Okay, got it. Oh, that's tricky.
It's totally spoofed. So they chose a city name, and it's not identifying potential person like most phone calls from people would.
Well, the technology about spamming phones definitely evolved thanks to also machine learning. It's everywhere.
So I was saying about BERT. BERT is a pre-trained set of information based upon understanding the book corpus and Wikipedia, and it understands context. It understands which words might be words that are related to the words in a query, possibly to complete a query, or which might, I told you about the part of speech identification that it does, where it might say named entity is as maybe the start of a good answer to a question, because it's defining what an entity might be, and that potentially is a good answer. And it uses I was saying it's a passage re-ranking approach, because what Google might do is use a less computationally expensive approach to find a corpus that's smaller than the whole web, like the top 50 or the top 100 results for a query. And then might switch from that simpler approach, like a BM25 or TF-IDF approach, to something that's more computationally expensive, like BERT, to understand the query and to find the best answer from the smaller corpus that you found with the original ranking. And it's a re-ranking. And that's how BERT would apply to maybe finding good answers to questions.
Now, let's go back to Hummingbird to go to another direction. And when I read it, the date here is important, 2013. when I read this, I thought that was pretty controversial because it's a huge goal for Google to put some kind of person rank, author rank, define who is who. People, are you? Bill Swolsky is an author identified as a scholar on a certain topic. Bill Swolsky could be also very knowledgeable about flowers and photography, but because Bill wrote and documented his expertise on this topic, it's much easier for Google to figure it out. And we'll go into deeper notions about how to identify an author. It's remarkable. But this is 2013. And yeah, can we go back in time? Google Plus, Author Rank, this whole thing. Explain to us what was going on back then.
Sure. So I was writing about a Microsoft paper at this point in time where they were talking about identifying authors of tweets to maybe understand better what they were tweeting about. And Probase was Microsoft's version of the knowledge base. And nowadays, the Probase information is referred to as the Microsoft Concept Graph. And Microsoft Concept Graph, if I do a search for my name under the Microsoft Concept Graph, it identifies me as a patent expert.
Yep.
I've never called myself a patent expert. I have had other people call me that, but it's not something I've done myself. So they may understand my tweets about patents might have something to do with me spending time writing about and thinking about patents a lot.
The thing here is that you identified, it's much easier for Google to understand that you're an expert or very knowledgeable in this area.
Yeah.
Well, you might know as much, and you do know as much about flowers and photography, but you didn't document it the same way.
Right.
So you made Google's jobs easier to understand your authority on this very specific type of knowledge, which are patents.
And at that point in time, Google Plus was around and it was relevant. It was possible to be involved in communities that talked about patents and search.
Google Plus was not a social media, guys. It was something else. It was an experiment, a failed experiment.
So if I was involved in communities about deep sea diving and scuba, and I talked about in those, I wrote blog posts about the best way to pick scuba equipment or diving tanks or things like that, and how to identify different deep sea creatures. It would be able to identify that I might be an expert in the sea, in sailing, in scubaing.
Is it if I simplify, is it kind of putting hashtags next to your profile type of things?
It's kind of like I told you, BERT can identify parts of speech and they can tag those. Google, when you do a search like let's see. Think of the best.
What do you want to try to find?
They're pronoun type searches like Alexander. No. Thinking of
well, if you talk about, for example, well, search engine, or what does that lead to? If we
Barack Obama was married to Michelle Obama, what was her date of birth. Google sees what was her date of birth, says the previous query, he mentioned Michelle Obama. We've tagged that as his wife.
And especially if you have words that have
So Google is
different meanings.
tagging queries in query sessions to answer later queries.
Mhm. Exactly, and that's what I'm able to break because I'm not we don't exist. I mean, to this rabbit hole, and I can totally see the difference when I'm searching in Spain or in France or elsewhere, and in Andorra where I live. It's pretty funky to be in this black hole for all the digital services. We don't have app stores. We have nothing. We don't exist. Anyways. Now, let's go into even more controversial.
Okay.
2020.
Mhm.
Google understands an author style well enough to imitate it. This was also, I was scratching my head because I understand it,
Yeah.
but trying to identify an author by the patterns, the footprint in the language and the way an author writes can identify him or her. I thought that was mind-blowing. But for you, it's not science fiction. It's really...
I was an English major in college, so we studied what different people wrote, and we tried to learn about their styles and what idiosyncrasies they had when they wrote. Like Thomas Carlyle was a British author during the Renaissance period, and he wrote in very long sentences. And the shortest sentence in one essay I read from him, the shortest sentence I could find was 17 words. So he would write these very long, well-formulated, well-structured sentences where he'd have like multiple clauses that followed some parallelism in their usage of verbs and so on, which made them very easy to read. He wasn't like William Faulkner with this extreme stream of consciousness type writing. He wrote long sentences that were readable. You have somebody like Ernest Hemingway, who wrote on a third grade reading level, who wrote short sentences, like 5-6 words long each. And there are unique patterns that authors write that college students learn. They can identify, they can be given text from multiple authors and identify who the authors are of that text, even without the names attached to them.
Well, you can certainly do it for photography and painting and art. So why not text?
Yeah. Right. So it's not hard to presume that Google, which has an incredible memory, can do that. It can understand, it can analyze, it can use n-grams to study the structure of things that people have written and what particular ways they have of punctuating, of phrasing things that are unique to them.
Now, I asked you the question before we went online because I said it wasn't going to be a trick, because that's a tricky question. Interesting, but tricky. Let's say that you write a piece on, I don't know, medium.com, but you use another name or even no name, nothing, no specification that it's you. And even between Go Fish Digital and SEO by the Sea, it's different. Your writing style is different. But at least, okay, I think Google can fairly match Go Fish Digital with SEO by the Sea.
I often write from a slightly different stance, a point of view.
But do you think if you were on an older website like medium.com or Blogspot or whatever, where you are not so much information and you write on okay, would Google be able to identify that it's you if you write about flowers or photography of flowers on medium.com without saying you are Bill Salsky?
It might not be, because the difference would be that I'm writing for different audiences. So as an SEO, I'm trained to use the words my audiences expect to see on page and that they'll search for.
Interesting.
So the way I might phrase things might be similar. So some of the patterns I use are definitely going to be the same, but some of the choices of words that I select are going to vary. They're going to be different.
Because for example, on Twitter, you have trolls, okay? And in the SEO industry, we have trolls under anonymous accounts that insult everybody else. And at least in France, we've been able to find out who was behind the Twitter account. But there was some social engineering going on, as well as trying to find the footprint, especially on tweets that are very short, because the way you do an emoji or some spelling mistakes or the way you phrase something would be very unique. So if us SEOs, but Google is missing the social engineering part where we exchange facts and opinions about who that person might be, and depending on who they attack and what they say, what they don't say, who they don't attack. So I always thought that was pretty remarkable that we're playing detectives like this and being able to track down a troller on Twitter. So it doesn't surprise me that the machine is able to some extent replicate this phenomenon.
So as a forum administrator, I was administrator of creative site forums. We sometimes had tag team spammers. Somebody would join the forum, ask a question, and then somebody else would join the forum and answer the question.
Yep.
And if you searched for, say, the question that was asked, you could see that the same pattern happened over and over again on different forums. And the same person asked the question and the same person answered the question. And it was them being lazy and that they didn't even bother to rephrase the question.
Or YouTube comments, you can see in half a second that they're fake comments and they were bought out. And they're just comments that will go under any video anyway, and it doesn't matter. But we're humans. Again, the challenge for machine, I don't think people realize the tremendous challenge to try to imitate this process that human can do very quickly. Not so easy for a machine, especially at the scale of something like Google. And that's why well, we spoke about RankBrain. That's why I wanted to go into this last one, because it's all about who is in relation to what and why. And I would even answer also when. In this, there is no time variable here, but I think it also could be added. So this is the final chapter, because this is as close as we can come to saying that Google understands, quote unquote, something or language.
So this is when you do a spoken query with Google Assistant, like a speaker, and you're asking it to take action to book a hotel reservation or a restaurant reservation, and most people often provide limited information or aren't too exact, and it's talking about how Google might better understand what those queries are saying, what they're asking for. Understand what entities are about, which restaurant, which hotel.
Well, the two examples you give, what is the hotel that looks like a cell?
Yeah.
Or what restaurants nearby serve omelets? Most definitely, very good example of what they're trying to achieve here. So phase one, they look at, again, previous queries without context, without the history, the search history. This would not work.
Mm-hmm.
But the process is not that complicated. It's compared to other patterns, it's really very, how can I say, ambitious.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem, and from my opinion, like the most difficult. It's actually like reverse. Who did this? Because it feels like, yeah, it's different people that I'm used to see. Feels like it's a totally different.
Rashard Bazadi.
It feels like a different mindset.
It's from Switzerland. And he does some interesting patents involving entities.
Because the solution, elegance, and Prabhakar Raghavan is a big fan of elegance in simplicity. And elegance in simplicity shows up also in this kind of pattern where it's very complicated question. I mean, what is that hotel that looks like a cell? Think about it. I mean, that's the type of question that humans answer, not a machine.
Yeah.
So now, what's next? What's next after that? What is they're still not there yet to identify authors. They're not there yet to qualify the level of PageRank, I guess, for authors or topical PageRank. But for the analysis of the text, I saw even in my own little like ranking factor type of formula, the body of text, the block of text throughout the years took so much more importance now than even 5 or 10 years ago, where H1 was more important than text 15 years ago. So the improvement, the evolution into, I don't like to use the word understand, but analyzing the text and trying to figure out what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
Is really, because some people say that, sure, the algorithms, but it's really about the computing power, processing power that allows this kind of things. What's your view on that? Doesn't feel like they're not using quantum computers to do that.
No, they're just using better approaches, better methods.
But for this type of work,
so Martin Splitt was talking about passage ranking, and he said in the past we looked at web pages that were about specific topics as being more important to ranking for queries about those topics. There were some pages that often were much broader in scope, like a page about clementine oranges would be the best page to answer a query about clementine oranges. A page about fruits of the world would cover all different types of fruits, might have more information about clementine oranges than the page about clementine oranges, and better information, but we wouldn't choose that page as a page to answer that query because it covered other things too. So the attempt to improve passage ranking was to identify these other pages that maybe have wider application, that maybe have just as much information about a specific topic as pages that are more focused on narrower topics.
Mm.
So they're trying to identify pages that may contain information that they would have passed by in the past. Their algorithm wasn't focused upon using those pages as answers.
Mm. Okay, that's interesting. The next episode, we are talking about the future of search and going into different topics. But it feels like, first, Google is still the best of them all by far, even if for, let's say, the 50,000 common queries that represent the needs for most people, any search engine does the job for this core set of queries. But then, how is it possible that Google has such a huge gap, such a leap forward compared to the other ones? Is it just because they still have a priority on search and
we don't understand enough what is a good search result and capable of comparing what provides the best answers. Bing, Google, Apple. We don't even consider Apple a search engine, and it is. It's hidden in plain sight, but it doesn't have a search engine result page. It's got interfaces in iPhones and MacBooks, but unless you are an Apple user, you don't see those.
Well, now we know definitely the features Spotlight and Siri have improved a lot with the new updates, and so now it's a little more obvious that there is something going on. But it feels like even Apple cannot catch up. Bing cannot catch up. I mean, no Mojic. No, I'm not talking about the Meta search engine like DuckDuckGo, but the ones that crawl the web and index the web. Even if I look at Majestic, that started in the 90s, and the other technologies that I know that are trying to do something like Majestic SEO, it feels like the web is too big and going too fast for them to ever catch up.
Which is why Google's moving away from human-based scalability processes like directories and knowledge bases.
Well, that's okay. An hour and 27 minutes. It's time to check out. Most definitely, very important part of what define our industry and the way now there's no going back. We will never ever go back to how it was before. So whether you, my friend, the listener, like it or not, Bill and I don't judge. We just observe, analyze. But when you start to put emotions into it, and yes, of course, privacy is a concern. Yes, of course, and so on. But all I'm saying is we can't go back. It's only moving forward. So we said, oh yeah, we don't really like Facebook that much on a personal level, but on a professional level, it's a tool. I have to work with Facebook. There's no other way around, and it feels like it's the same with these concepts and these algorithms, and people should not isolate one symbol. I always go back to this. RankBrain is the symbol of machine learning at Google. No, they all work together, and one alone does not make any sense without the other. It's a complete mix, and it's really moving very fast forward. Do you have one last word of what was I going to say? Sagesse. The wise, yeah. One wise What if you had somebody in front of you who is a little bit confused? Well, maybe it's not the right question to ask at the end, but I always tell them focus on the output. Don't focus on leave it to Bill to understand. Focus on what does it want to achieve, and if you do that, you should be fine.
So when I'm looking at a patent, when I'm looking at a paper, and I'm trying to understand it better, I'll stop looking at what it's discussing, what it's talking about, and start looking at the people who wrote it. See what else they've written, what other patents they've written, what they're writing on Twitter, what their different positions have been at the search engine on LinkedIn, and get a sense of who they are as people, what they're interested in, what they grew up learning, what influenced them. When I think about Google, I remember its roots as a search engine. When I look at a place like Yahoo, it was a portal first. Mm. It had a bunch of social type things like Yahoo Personals, Yahoo Photographs, Yahoo.
It's people's homepage.
Yeah. It was a portal type thing. Its purpose, and it developed into a search engine. It did things, but it did things differently than Google did. And I try to understand the DNA behind them. Same thing with Bing. Bing has a slightly different youth, adolescence, and grew into something that in many ways emulates and imitates what Google does, but they have their own approaches, their own partnerships with other companies. They're much closer affiliated to Facebook than Google has ever been.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
And that sort of influences them too. Mm-hmm. So understanding people and understanding the companies better, I think, makes a difference.
Because those people have an experience, have a goal, have values, have culture, they want to do something, they want to achieve something, and we don't need to be engineers. We are not engineers, but we can still understand Google algorithms. Granted, those algorithms are not like really high level, like nuclear physics type of algorithms, but still, it's.
I'm not reading theory of special and general relativity here.
Yeah.
I read a patent. It usually starts out. There is a formula, and it's usually in the beginning they talk about a specific problem they're trying to solve with the patent, what the state of the art is, how people tried to solve it in the past, and then a new approach that they developed in the patent that solves that problem. And a lot of the patents talk about assumptions that the inventors have about the web, about search engines, about searchers. And those things are interesting taking note of too.
Feels like it's the biggest secret behind SEO by the Sea. Because we spoke about this before.
Yeah.
What we learn from scientific papers or by profiling the author, I wouldn't say it's more important, but it plays a huge part because the format of the patent and the way, the limitations of the patent doesn't allow so much expression as a scientific paper, which also has its drawbacks to understand. We spoke about it, how every single scientist tried to express, create its own language, feels like. But it's a complete picture, and people see you posting the patent and they read the summary. Well, first of all, I like you very much, Bill, but I never take anything for granted. And yeah, sure, you summarize it very well. I will, you show me doing it. I was like, okay, who are those inventors? Who are those guys? Those names? I'm not used to see them. I'm going to check them out. I'm going to look them up. And the work they did, the overall picture in a world where everything is black and white and there's no shades of gray anymore, especially in the world of search. The lesson of the day is that it's just shades of gray here, no black and white. Yeah, I think we can end it on this note, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So nuance, guys. It's all about nuance. Thank you for coming back onto the podcast, and I cut you for another series. So we'll see a lot of beer coming up. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye now. Thanks.